Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. My name is Peter Schrappen, co-host of Seattle Boat Show Live. It's June 10th, according to my iPhone. It's a beautiful day in Seattle, and it's a beautiful sight to see you, Mark Benzel. How is it going?
Terrific. I'm back from the East Coast, and boy, it gets hot back there. It was so nice to get off the plane to a nice 52-degree temperature after leaving 90 degrees in Baltimore, Maryland. So yeah, I'm back.
Welcome back. So I guess I'm picturing you, Mark, getting ready for your next big boating odyssey. Where's the next step in your summer plans?
Well, I'll be headed out into the islands here locally, and then headed south. I'll be going from Anacortes down to the beautiful town of Waggoner, and then down to Langley, and then down to Everett, and then continuing my way south. But I'm still getting, and we'll get to this in the updates, the question at least 3 times a day by phone, by people walking to the office: when will the border be open?
And that's just for me. That's those 2
I know,
questions.
So I'm going to tease. I have an answer for that later on in the show.
Oh wow, we're getting sophisticated now. We're actually kind of the whet the appetite part of Seattle Boat Show Live.
You bet.
I like that.
We're going to give that a try.
And how are our other co-hosts, the Landons, doing? Where are they?
The Landons left Petersburg, Alaska yesterday, and they're somewhere in between that and Juneau, Alaska. And I suspect tonight they're in Pybus Cannery Cove, which is one of my favorite anchorages in all of Alaska. Just a gorgeous, gorgeous spot. So we'll get a full report from them next week. I talked to them several times while they've been up there, and I'll give some updates on what's going on in Alaska as we get to the updates.
That's the part
Peter,
of Alaska. Yeah. Yes,
what
Mark?
about legislative?
Well, speaking of Alaska, I've got some good news for you. And I would say Pybus Bay is the one area where you're probably guaranteed to see a black or grizzly bear, I think.
That's true.
It's part of the it's part of price of admission for sure. So yeah, you might remember from last week or the previous week where I was talking about how if you're in Alaska and your cruising license expires from the U.S. Coast Guard, that the Customs and Border Protection Southeast Alaska office was requiring that you visit a foreign port, and normally that would not be that big of an ordeal visiting Canada. But as Mark alluded to, Canada remains closed. So that official was requiring boaters to go down to Mexico, spend 15 days there, and then come back if they wanted to see all of the beauty of Alaska. But we were got into action. I talked to Senator Sullivan's office, talked to CBP, and now they can and I did that with not by myself, but in concert with a bunch of other like-minded associations like U.S. Super Yacht Association and Monique Weber and Mark Leeson, a long list of supporters. And we were able to actually untie that Gordian knot now with a simple Form 1300, Mark, a new form for me. They can fill out the form and get approval to stay in Alaska as opposed to having to venture out of that beautiful state. So when people can go to Alaska, people come to Washington State because it's on the way. And we were delighted to bring that good news. So yeah, that's
well. I'll segue right from there to the updates for Alaska. So we figure there's between 30 and 40 boats that did the express trip up to Alaska, and for the last month and a half, we've been talking about that express trip, and we've done seminars on it, presentations, and it worked. CBP, the Canadian Customs and Border Protection, actually took the information, and everybody who followed our advice had a float plan and showing that they were going to do the most expeditious trip on the way up to Alaska. And it's been working. Now they've been stopped by Royal Mounted Police along the way. And typically the answer the Royal Mounted Police wanted is, we're on an express trip to Alaska. We checked in through Sydney, and We are not stopping. We are anchoring only. And that was good enough to satisfy everybody. So we've been getting very good reports of everybody who went up, that it's worked out very, very well. They have not had encounters with locals, so there haven't been any issues on that. And I teased a few minutes ago that I'm going to go out on a limb here. As I said, I get asked at least 3 to 4 times a day, when's the border going to open? I have no inside information. I read all the newspaper and news reports that I can. And here is my best guess. We seem to be going towards a point where they've set this up that we're going to hear on the 21st of June some answer. And the answer typically has been every month. They kicked the can down the road and said, we're going to let you know next month. And I am guessing we're going to hear that again this month. The numbers are still not high enough for vaccinations in Alaska. But when we get to the end of July, I think we're going to start to see some positive announcements, but it could mean early August or end of August, the border might open, is my best guess today where we sit. And boy, I can tell you, when that border is open, there are so many people revving up their boats, ready to go across that border and go experience Canada. So it's going to be interesting to watch.
Well, yeah, I'll be right there too. I'm still waiting to get my Nexus Pass validated. That's been put on hold as well, and I think that's going to be a huge stack of paperwork that they're going to be processing.
I agree.
Well, we've got Dick and Annetta on the hook in Cherry Cove, Catalina Island, California. Thanks so much for saying hi to us. And they want to say hi to Fred and Stephanie. So if I got that message correct, hi Fred, hi Stephanie. So yeah, if you're out and about, drop us a line in the chat, and we'd love to read it on the air.
Well, in a little while, we've got last week we got a report from my co-writer on our Waggoner Virgin Islands book, and Dave and Patty Ryan and their daughter Kat are going to join us in a little bit and give us an update on the Virgin Islands. And they also had issues with border crossings and so forth, and those procedures are now very clear. So things are opening up. We'll hear more about that. Now, in preparation for tonight's show, I talked to some of our local marinas, and one of the ones that also comes up in questions is Roche Harbor. What's going on at Roche Harbor? And our friends Troy Buck and Kevin Carlton gave me an update today, and Roche Harbor is open. They're going to be open for 4th of July. They don't know exactly how far, meaning in the past, Roche Harbor's had fun games for everybody to participate in. It's not clear that's going to happen. Fireworks look like it, but that could get cut back at the last minute. So they're not willing to absolutely commit, but they're being very positive about it. Now, the procedure at Roche Harbor is they're not taking any reservations. The procedure is they'd like you to come to the marina on the morning that you would like moorage, call in after 8 o'clock. They'll put you on the list and they'll call you in. And the good news is they've been getting quite a few people in. They haven't been turning people back. The challenges they've been having is having enough big boat moorage, because that usually means one of their big permanent slips, somebody leaves to go off on their trip and a slip opens up. But the area where they have been challenged is having enough 50 amp power to take care of all the boats that want 50 amp power. So the restaurants are open, and they're at about 50% limitation. And we got some reports from the Memorial Day weekend, and there were a fair number of open moorage slips. So if you really want to go there, give it a try. It's such a great crew there. They're going to do everything they can to help. So that's the Roche Harbor report. We also had questions about Rosario Resort. We reported a couple of weeks ago that Rosario Resort went up for sale. And I talked to Christopher Peacock today, the general manager there, long time, used to be the artist in residence there, and now the general manager running the whole place. And they're fully open in the marina. The restaurant in the mansion is open, and we recommend making reservations ahead of time. They're only seating at about 50% capacity. And the Cascade Grill outside is open Fridays through Mondays, so it's not open every day. And there was a general theme with restaurants, even here in my home port of Anacortes, where the restaurants are really struggling. And they're struggling because they can't get enough labor to stay open 7 days a week. And we're finding this even with restaurants up in British Columbia. So our recommendation is to call ahead, make a reservation, but also see if they're going to be open on the days you plan to be there, because there's a possibility that they may not. And we're finding some of the restaurants are staggering when they're open and not open. So you may need to call around, and they're doing the best they can, but we're still getting the remnants of COVID and changing of how things are. So Rosario Resort, if it's going to be on your list, that's terrific, and consider that. We're also hearing that a lot of the anchorages are pretty full. It's still early in the season, and everybody's wondering what that July, August timeframe is going to be. Almost everybody I talk to is just dying to get out of the water this year and enjoy our waterways around us. So, and as I keep pointing out, there's usually less people if you go south into the South Puget Sound area, and it's beautiful cruising down there. I cruised it last year. About a month from now, I'll be down in that area researching the marinas for the Waggoner Cruising Guide. So looking forward to that. Oh, there we go. We got
11 minutes into the show, Mark, and I thought you might have mentioned. You said
took me that long.
The book that you published. I thought it was right there, for the taking, but that's okay. We got it in.
So I have a bit of sad news, and that's for those of you who've cruised up in the Broughton Archipelago. One of the must-see places is Quatsi Bay, and the longtime owners of Quatsi Bay, Anka Fraser and Max Kiernan, have just done a super job. And this is one of those marinas that you've read about probably, where they built it. And building a marina up there means chopping down the trees, felling the logs, clearing them, and lashing them together, and boom, you've got a dock. And it's a lot more work than I just made it out to be. And Max and Anka have been doing that for 25 years. They sold the marina a month and a half ago. And unfortunately, Max, who was not old enough for this to happen, but he passed away on May 30th. So there's a lot of people out there who've been up there and just feel incredibly connected to Max and Anka for what they brought with this marina and their happy hours, and just a fantastic place to visit. It's closed for this season. The new owners are doing some renovations. We don't know what their plans are for next season, and we're following up with that. I also had a chance to talk to Pierre Landry of Pierre's Echo Bay, and Pierre's doing great, building stuff like crazy on his new home in Ladysmith, and he was actually headed up to Echo Bay tomorrow to deal with one of the float houses he owns up there, and he reports back that while he's not involved at all with the marina, they will not have any food events this summer, but they are open. No pig roast, no prime rib. And everybody who calls wants to know when the pig roast is. I'm sorry, not this year. So, but if you do get up there, Pierre still continues to own the cliffside across the Echo Bay from the Echo Bay Resort. And I'm sure he wouldn't mind people stopping by and saying hello. And he's just a great individual with his wife, Tova. And again, a long-term fixture for up in the Broughtons. And I had to ask, what about Billy Proctor? How's Billy doing? Billy's 86 years old right now and still going strong. I think he's going to outlive all of us. And so Billy and his museum up there open this year, and you can see him up there on right over the island from Echo Bay. So that's kind of the updates. Not a lot of new information, but I'm being optimistic, and I think next week we'll see where I stand on. Maybe we'll start a betting pool as to when the border is going to open.
We've already got something in there's something in the chat about that.
does the NMTA approve of us having a betting pool?
Well, I think we probably have to put together a committee for that.
Committee.
Or an ad hoc committee to circumvent
Ad
our
hoc committee.
bylaws. Yes.
It's
I had
probably only a problem if we bet money.
maybe so, like a chocolate milkshake is something that I like to throw around in bets. I had
Yeah.
a really unique experience yesterday, Mark. I got the good fortune to interview Chip Hanauer, the boat guy.
Yeah, how is he?
He's doing incredible. We spent about an hour and a half just shooting the breeze. I have as you know, Mark, I have a podcast, and he was my latest guest, and I can put that in the chat. But yeah, he's playing a lot of flamenco guitar, and we talked about his career and his life, and high points and low points, and all points in between. He lost his voice for 3 years, and we talked about the depths of depression that brought. We talked about
Wow, I didn't know that.
yeah, it was he gets Botox injections to keep his voice going, and it was really a fantastic conversation, and my mouth was agape just at how modest and humble and unassuming he is throughout the entire interview. Which, if you know Chip, he's a crack up, but also
He's a character.
Yeah, so I'll put that in the chat, and encourage everyone to check it out. I learned a lot. I think you'll learn a lot. So and I hope that's not
Is
too.
he still involved with the winter rendezvous?
The winter rendezvous. You know, we didn't talk about that. I think that's been maybe put in the Hall of Fame.
Okay.
I don't think it occurred this past year. I could reach out to Dwight Jones at Elliott Bay Marina or Chip and find out what the status is for next year, but I don't think that was a part of the Paulsbo scene this past year. But yeah, what a fantastic event to occur right after the Seattle Boat Show. And speaking of the Seattle Boat Show, we've got some dates. And
you should be ringing the bell there, Peter.
Yeah, thanks. It's too close to me. I almost forget that. That's what I'm promoting. But yeah, February 4th through the 12th, Seattle Boat Show. We're looking to be in person this year. Governor Inslee is reopening the state on June 30th, and we're making sure that includes in-person convention-style consumer shows like the Seattle Boat Show. So yeah, that's might be some news for you. February 4th through the 12th. And speaking of the boat show, these segues lead one to the next. I want to thank Katie McPhail for every week, in and out, every week. She's making us look good and behind the scenes. So thanks, Katie, for organizing these fun check-ins that we call Seattle Boat Show Live. So back to you, Mark.
Oh, I'm speechless after that. Yeah. We do have something special tonight. Not that many people know, and you're going to ring the bell on this one, that I also author or co-author a cruising guide on the Virgin Islands, and we've now put the Waggoner brand on it. We're updating it, and I recruited a co-writer, a good friend, Dave Ryan, and Dave Ryan is right now in the BVI, and he's going to pop up here on the screen any moment now, with his wife, Patty, and his daughter, Catherine. And they're sitting at Leverick Bay. And there they are. And I thought as long as they're there, and Dave last week during the show, he was watching it from the Virgin Islands, and he tuned in and he said, hey, would you like an update on what's going on in the Virgin Islands? And I thought, let's go for it. So Dave, Patty, Catherine, what do we have going on? Is the Virgin Islands open?
It is, especially if you're vaccinated. Let me go ahead and share my screen, and there it is.
What's the weather? What's the weather like there right now?
It's been this past couple of days, but we've had some squalls and storms come through, but it's 80 degrees. With a wind chill down to about 70. So if you're not familiar with the British Virgin Islands, this is what it looks like. And we have been, Patty and I have been coming here since before Catherine was born, about a little bit more than 30 years. And we are, as Mark said, sitting at Leverick Bay Marina, and the Waggoner research vessel is Virgin Vanquish. And there we are. Actually, this is a picture of us earlier today, sitting on the end dock there, and we have in the last few weeks, and we're coming up on our third week, pretty much done a complete circle canvas of the islands to see what's open. And I want to point out this is a British Virgin Islands live update. We have not had a chance to look around the U.S. yet, but here's what we're seeing is, it's been since before COVID that we've been able to be down here. And we knew this, but have been really touched by how friendly the service is, and how the experience down here in these islands is that you're working with the family owners, the patriarchs and the descendants that own these businesses. They're not super chains. It's a very personal and friendly experience, and uniquely friendly for most Caribbean destinations. The BVI has handled the pandemic extraordinarily well, and now for vaccinated folks. And we, as soon as we were vaccinated and had enough time that we were able to enter with the minimized quarantine requirement, then we came down and are spending some time here. They have had only one death, and there are in the last few weeks no new cases in the islands. And we got some breaking news today in terms of a change of the rules to even further open the BVI to vaccinated travelers. Boaters are returning. It does feel like still about 20 years ago in terms of the density and the amount of traffic. But the islands have been through a massive whipsaw. The fall 19, winter 19 season was a record breaker for them after the recovery from Irma and Maria hurricanes. And then it went to zero. There was no boats, no tourism, no border crossing whatsoever as of about February or March of 2020. It looks though, as what we're seeing here is that in the weeks we've been here, is the charter fleets have gotten up to about 50% booked, and they've all just dropped their free cancellation terms because they have enough bookings and they have enough demand that they're turning some bookings away. And so the terms and conditions on chartering boats now have gone back to the normal where you can get rescheduled, but you can't, once you have booked, you can't cancel. And that's an indication of a pickup in demand. We want to point out that the islands have completely, fully recovered from the Irma and Maria hurricanes. And what has struck us as we've been sailing around is that the silver linings that came from this. The bad news was almost the entire wipeout of the entire charter fleet. All 4,000 boats in the BVI were sunk. The good news now is they're all back and they're brand new. So new boats were redirected here, or the insurance companies and the businesses have been able to repopulate. So if you charter down here, you're most likely going to be chartering into a relatively new vessel. And there's also been a heavy shift to cats. There's still a lot of monohull sail available, tons of power cat, sail cat, very, very limited, almost non-existent supply of monohull motor yacht charters. We have one of the last, the boat that we co-own here is one of the last remaining sort of commercial monohull motor yachts, but though there are some. And we made it through, Vanquish made it through Irma Maria in one piece. So yeah, it's a rugged vessel. It got tumbled over during the hurricane, but didn't sink. And so, we're on the boat now, and us and our partners are able to use it. There's also been a lot of replacement and upgrading. The Royal Navy replaced all of the navigation and channel markers. They put back all of the missing ones. And so as we've been going around, we've been struck by how all the nav and markings are not only there, and they're not only where they're supposed to be, but they're upgraded. So where there weren't lights, there are, et cetera. And so this is an easy cruising ground. You can see where you're going in almost every case. But now it's even better marked than it's ever been. The mooring fields have been expanded, and this was happening before the hurricane, but continued with the rebuilding after the hurricane. This is for environmental reasons, and also to provide, because it can get deep near the attractive areas pretty quick. And so the mooring fields have been increased. And so there's much, much less need for anchoring. If you want to go off the beaten path, you anchor. But now, if you're seeing the main sites of the BVI, you're going to be on a mooring or at a dock if you want to be, although you can still anchor. But it's a great idea to moor because, of course, it protects the reef. Yes, yes. You can see the anchor damage where there still is some. Also, we've been able to see now the 4 years of reef recovery after the hurricanes with relatively little human impact, because the human load here since Irma Maria has not been anywhere near back to the level of traffic that has been coming through the islands, with the exception of the winter 19. So we tried to put our thoughts together. We also had some friends with us here last week, and we said, okay, what does it look like for the next season or next year? What we're hearing everywhere is everything's going to be open. All the destinations, the facilities, all the facilities are also new and either new or in upgraded condition. The amenities, the activities, the programs, the entertainment that go on is all going to be up and running starting in November. If you're fans of Sabre Rock or Bitter End, Sabre Rock is expected to be open in October and November, and Bitter End is expected to have food and beverage and drinks open as well. Not the entire resort. The Bitter End Resort has so much rebuilding to do. We expect, and the islands expect, this to be a really sort of jazzed up season with lots of special events and promotions and really sort of celebration of the recovery of the islands and also the recovery from the pandemic. We do expect there to continue to be pandemic protection measures, because they're very, very protective of COVID in the country, because the whole economy is based on tourism. And well, let me give you the new news here. Is as of today, the government announced that starting Tuesday, no quarantine for vaccinated travelers. So, and in addition, you can use a PCR test or an antibody test for the pre-trip approval. And this means then vaccinated travelers can fill out a form 5 days in advance, fly down here, walk through the airport, prove you're vaccinated, and go right on your way. If you're not vaccinated, you still have tests and quarantines and tracking and other restrictions, and they're going to be very rigorous. I expect them to be very rigorous about that because of the economic impact to the islands of any outbreak happening. We've also discovered a much more digital experience down here. There's app-based and web-based booking of mooring balls, including in advance, not only the same day. There's WhatsApp communication with many of the vendors, the facilities, boat Wi-Fi offerings and options in the relatively newer charter fleet. There's a lot better than it was before. So it's more of a digital and a connected islands. And we're hearing that from all of the folks in the trade here that bookings are strong. And so the recommendation, we sort of book early, especially for the hot weeks. And what we also expect is that there maybe a lot of changes in the air corridor coming down here, because during COVID and right now, it's very limited sort of threading a needle to do your bookings to get down, get in to St. Thomas or St. John and then over to the BVI. And we expect that sort of the choice of air travel to re-expand through the fall. So last thought is when to come here. The season is from November through June, and the November, the winter, and the early part of the year is the sailor's paradise with the high winds. Although the sea state is up, and then after you get past spring break, then the islands, the sea state, the winds die down. There's still, you got 15-knot winds almost every day. As sea state dies down and the visibility goes up, and so it's a different BVI from November through June. And if you'd like to learn more about all of that, then you can take a look at the Waggoner Virgin Islands Cruising Guide. And any other thoughts for you guys?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that the BVI is such a special place, and it really has come back strong. If you've never been here before, whether you're a couple wanting to have a romantic getaway, if you're a group of friends who want to compare painkillers island by island, if you're a family with young children or an extended family with older children and grandchildren, there's something for everyone to do here, or you can do nothing. And the water's warm and the drinks are cold and the people are just lovely. You'll have a vacation that you'll be raving about for years. Come on down.
And if you want a place that viruses don't like, salt, outdoors, alcohol, and sun.
Good advice. Good advice. Well, we
Sign me
really
up.
appreciate that, you guys. And we don't want to interrupt your recreating at Leverett Bay. I'm sure, Kat, have you done a poll of where the better painkiller is, Leverett Bay or White Bay with the soggy dollar bar?
I think Soggy Dollar is always reliable. It's like the home of the original painkiller,
It
but
is.
I'm still doing some extensive research on that. So I can get back to you when I have some more details.
All right, I appreciate that. And I'll just throw in a plug. Peter can ring his bell. We're the Waggoner Group. We're going to be announcing 2 flotilla trips down to the Virgin Islands for December and April of next year. And if you want to join us, we'll have information on our website. And we will also be following in Catherine's footsteps to determine who has the best painkillers. So thank you guys from the BVI. Always great to chat with you. You look great. You look tan, fit, and rested.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Mark. See you
Have a
soon, I
great
hope.
show.
Good
Bye,
night,
guys.
everyone.
We've got a special guest tonight talking about not as good of a subject as the BVI, but still very critical. And that's the Peter. Do you want to introduce Troy?
Sure. Yeah. I've worked alongside Troy for 8 years. I just celebrated my work anniversary, 11 years here at NMTA, Mark. But Troy and I have been together for 8 years, which is awesome. He's an incredible staffer at the Department of Natural Resources, always there to take my call. I can call when I sell, email, and that's just not me, but all marina operators have just incredible access. And I'm really fortunate to have Troy on our team. I feel like working shoulder to shoulder to solve our state's never ending derelict vessels that are out there on the water causing a whole bunch of headaches. So Troy is the program manager at Department of Natural Resources in charge of our state's Derelict Vessel Program. And for those who don't know, and I'm sure Troy will get into this, so I don't want to steal your thunder, Troy, but boaters have no problem taxing ourselves on this issue. Every registration, you'll pay $3 per registration, which will go into a fund, which Troy can then figure out how to prioritize using a complicated theorem to find out how to best get the most bang for our dollars. There's also a little bit more funding that comes into the program. There's a derelict vessel turn-in program. So yeah, Troy, you've been on our list to have on for quite some time. So we're delighted to have you, and take it away, please.
Troy, why is this a problem? I mean, if somebody wants to get rid of their boat, they could leave it in front of my house, and if I like it, I may take it in.
Well, I'll be sure to tell people that.
Give them my address. Huh?
Absolutely.
So how big of a problem is this?
So that's a great question. And let me get to my first slide that has it. We currently have 265 vessels on our vessel of concern list. That's just the ones that meet the definition of abandoned and derelict, and only the ones that have been reported to us. So the problem is quite large. It really is. So just to give you a little bit background on the program, we started in 2002, and we've improved the program since then tremendously every year, especially with the help of ARBA and NMTA and others. And it's been a great partnership. It really has. And as Peter said, $3 of your recreational vessel registration comes to the program, and $1 per foot from commercial vessels. And then there's $5 per visitor permit that comes to the program as well. And that all adds up to about $2 million per biennium, so $1 million a year. And that's not an awful lot sometimes, especially when you talk about the chill cat, which is right behind me. If you can see back here, that one costs $1.2 million to get it to remove and deconstruct. So we had to have a little extra money from the legislature this last biennium for large vessel removals. And thankfully we had that so we could get that chill cat out of there. So who has the authority to remove these vessels? Well, first and foremost, the owner. The owner is responsible for the removal of these vessels and always will be. Other than that, whoever has jurisdiction over the aquatic environment that the vessel might be in. So on state-owned aquatic lands, we have jurisdiction, but we're not the only authorized public entity allowed to remove vessels. So who else can do it? Well, WFW can do it, parks can do it, ports, cities, not private marinas, but public marinas, towns and counties. So most of your government agencies within the state have the ability to use the Derelict Vessel Removal Program statutes to get rid of these vessels. And then they can apply to our program for 90% reimbursement. I mean, that's great, right? They can remove the vessels that are a priority for them in their backyards and then come to us and get reimbursed for up to 90%. Now, the other 10% can be in-kind costs or administrative costs. So they can really lower their burden the more they itemize that reimbursement application. So it's a good program, but unfortunately, it only goes as far as the money does. And just to give you an idea, I'll talk a little bit more about how much each vessel will cost to remove. But I wanted to show you our database here because as the program, we're mandated to keep track of all these vessels. And the way we do that is through this database. So every vessel that's ever been reported to our program is in this database. And some of them have been removed. 265 of them have not. And I just wanted to show you a little bit about this because when I was talking about jurisdiction, the green area on this map here is state-owned aquatic lands. The tan area right there in the center is military. That's federal. That's out of our jurisdiction. And then you can see little bits of red and stuff. That's other than state-owned aquatic land. So that could be city, that could be county, private property, or anything like that. Now, the program can go on to those aquatic lands, but it has to go through the authorized public entity who has jurisdiction. So that's important. So where it's located is important as well. But we have all the information about those vessels in the database, and we can run reports and find out where some problem areas are so we can put emphasis in those areas as well to help deal with these vessels. And one of the things that we want to do is prevent these vessels from becoming abandoned and derelict. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But when we put them in the database, we have to prioritize which ones we're going to remove because we only have $2 million every 2 years to remove these vessels, right? So which ones do we remove first? The ones that are highest in priority are the ones that are threats to human safety and the environment. Those are our number ones. Those are our emergencies. So we assign our limited resources to those first. And then as we get rid of those or get into, a little more less numbers of number ones, we'll remove number twos and number threes. But that doesn't mean we don't remove twos and threes and fours if we're removing a number one in that area. We love the bundle because we don't want to send our contractors out to the same area more than once. So if we're removing a priority one and there's a couple of others in that area, we're going to grab those up as well. Just because we don't want to have to pay them to go out there twice.
Hey, Troy, when you grab them, what happens to them?
So in most cases, it takes us 30 days to gain custody of these vessels. What custody is just the legal right to touch it or to remove it or to move it. Typically, by the time we get a hold of them, there's very little value left in these vessels. So we tend to destroy the vessels. The steel ones and aluminum ones, we try and recycle. The fiberglass and wooden ones typically end up in a landfill, unfortunately, as well as the concrete ones. However, we're trying to start a new program that'll recycle the fiberglass and wooden ones. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But some authorized public entities end up selling these vessels, the ones that have value, so they can do that as well. But the statutes say that we can use the vessel, sell the vessel, or destroy the vessel, however we want. And we try and do it in the best way possible for our taxpayers. We're trying to be responsible.
Troy, you have when a boat is reported, there's probably a registration number on it. And what typically is happening? Do you call the owners and do the owners just say, take it away, or what is typically happening?
So that's a great question. So when we get a report on a vessel, we try and gather as much information about the vessel so we can contact the owner of the vessel, as well as the property owner, because they may know who the owner is. So we try and contact the owner, and the best way to do that is through the WN number or the registration number or the documented name on the vessel or the documented number. And we try and contact that last registered owner to find out, and educate them on being responsible vessel owners and find out what their plans are for the vessel and encourage them to follow the statutes of Washington State. So when that fails, then we move into prioritizing which one is removed and which one is not. Sometimes we get the local law enforcement involved to encourage them to be responsible vessel owners by talking to the vessel owners as well. In other words, we try everything before we step in and try and remove the vessel, because we don't want to spend our hard-earned tax dollars on the removal of these vessels. We would rather, use them elsewhere, obviously, but we just want to prevent that if we can. So we were talking about where the money comes from. So the green area, the DVRA there, that's the money we were talking about from registration. So the light blue on the left there is the large vessel removal fund, and that was 2.5 million this last biennium. And I talked a little bit about that earlier. So the legislature said, hey, we recognize that you have a large vessel problem and we want to help out a little bit. So they contributed 2.5 million from the capital budget to our program so that we can remove vessels. And like I said before, it was a good thing they did because we were able to remove the chill cat with that money, as well as some others. And we were hoping to remove a couple of others, but because of the chill cat, we had to put those on hold for a little while. Now the ALEA, the dark blue up there at the top, that's the Aquatic Land Enhancement Account. That's what DNR contributes to the removal of these vessels, because we're an authorized public entity and we have to pay our 10% as well. Plus the statutes only pay for one person for the program, which is quite a bit for the whole state. So DNR pays for an additional 2 people for the program. So there's 3 of us for the whole state.
Troy, I have a quick question. Troy, how do you define derelict vessel? That's a question that came in the chat.
Okay, a derelict vessel and an abandoned vessel, 2 distinct definitions. A derelict vessel is a vessel that's in danger of going aground, breaking up, or sinking, and you know the owner. So you have to know who the owner is in order for it to be classified as derelict, or it has to be in violation of posted established rules, like on a guest dock, for more than 7 days. But you also have to know who the owner is. Barring that, then you can go to the abandoned definition, and abandoned clearly just goes off of time. So if it's been there for 30 days or more at any one time, it's considered abandoned. Or if it's been in the area for 90 days in any 365-day period, it's considered abandoned. Both definitions will get the vessel into the program. So a little bit about how much these vessels cost. You can see that military and government vessels are built a little bit more stout and sturdy, and it costs a lot more to deconstruct those. So the costs are obviously proportional to that. The commercial ones are a little bit more robust than your recreational ones, so they cost a little bit more. Recreational by far is the highest number of vessels that we deal with, but you can see that they're the smallest per vessel cost. And we can reduce that even further if we can get these vessels into the vessel turn-in program prior to them becoming abandoned and derelict. And what I mean by that is, if you turn it into the vessel turn-in program, we share the costs with the owners. They can remove hazardous materials and trash and stuff like that. And that saves us a ton of money from having to go out and get something off the bottom of the sound out there. So the vessel turn-in program, great program. And we recently got the cap removed on that, so we can spend more than $200,000 per biennium on that program, which we usually ran out within 10 to 12 months on a new biennium. So we wouldn't have the vessel turn-in program for over half the biennium, which is just didn't make sense, because we can remove more for less that way.
Troy, does the owner have a potential fine or cost if they're identified as doing nothing for an abandoned or derelict vessel?
That's a great question, and there's a couple of different things that can happen. We cannot fine people in the DNR. Unfortunately, we don't have that legislative capability, but they are legislated. The statutes clearly state that the owners of the vessel are required to repay us for any costs that we incur to remove their vessel. That's not always easy to perform. Some vessel owners out there just really don't have the assets to pay us back, unfortunately, but they are required. And they can also be ticketed by local law enforcement for the abandonment or dereliction of a vessel, which is a misdemeanor the first time, obviously, but they can be ticketed. And that's something that we've been trying to educate local law enforcement on as well. And that speaks a little bit to what some of our program improvements are going to be here in the near future. So last year, we got a couple of laws passed. One of them was grants to law enforcement, and the other was the recycling program. Unfortunately, the funding for both of those programs was stripped out of the last legislative session in 2020 because of COVID. However, they put it back in this year, so that's great. So we have the money starting in July to start grants to local law enforcement. And what's that going to do? That's going to get them out on the water enforcing aquatic laws like vessel registration, anchorage laws, doing safety checks, talking to the owners and just educating them on state statutes. And hopefully that will prevent a lot of these abandoned and derelict vessels from happening. Because if we can't find out who the owners are because they're not registering the vessels, DOL deletes the records after 6 years. We can't find the owners. We can't hold them responsible. But if we can get the owners out there to register their vessels, then hopefully we'll be able to find those owners and just educate them, and they'll go out and take care of it. Like I said, we got rid of the spending cap for the vessel turn-in program, and we lowered the secondary liability from 65 feet down to 35 feet. And the reason for that is most vessels over 35 feet don't get hauled out of the water on a regular basis. So they're a higher risk than the other ones. And that's why we did the secondary liability for that. And all that is if you try and sell a vessel because it's dilapidated and you don't want to deal with the deconstruction or the disposal costs, and you try and sell it on Craigslist for $100, then we're going to say if it becomes abandoned or derelict after that and they can't pay for it, the buyer can't pay for it, we'll come after the seller and encourage them to be responsible. Now, they can avoid that by going through an inspection and documenting all that and sending it into my office. So they can shed that secondary liability pretty easily. So how do you report these vessels? Well, there's a multitude of ways to do so. You can email our program, you can fax our program, you can call our program, you can even go onto our website at DNR and report a vessel. And the great thing about that DART program is whatever you enter into the report, we can input directly into our database so we don't have to retype everything back in, and it saves us time. You can also attach photos to that as well. You can also use MyCoast. We have a page on MyCoast. So if you have the MyCoast app and you're used to reporting debris and stuff like that that you see on the beaches or out in the water, you can also report derelict vessels on there, and you can post pictures of that as well. So you can do it any way you feel is easiest for you, because all we want to know is about that vessel, and we can take care of the rest after that, hopefully. So what do we have planned for the future? Oh gosh. So
Hey,
we
Troy,
really want to recycle
Troy,
these boats. Yes.
What's planned for the future?
Plan for the future?
Yeah.
Oh,
What do you got?
well, that's a great question.
Thank you.
So plan for the future is we're going to recycle these vessels, the wooden and fiberglass ones right now. There was a great study done in Rhode Island, and they took these fiberglass vessels and they burned them in a kiln that created concrete, a concrete manufacturing power plant. And they did it in such a manner that it actually lowered the concrete manufacturing's carbon footprint because they were burning these fiberglass vessels. So it's a good thing for everyone. So we want to try and start something like that, and maybe not always going to a kiln or to a paper mill plant or something like that. Maybe it'll go into secondary products. There's a company out there that takes shredded fiberglass and they put it into another resin, and they make jersey barriers and telephone poles and manhole covers and stuff out of all of this stuff. So there is a market out there. And what we want to do is prove the concept so that maybe private industry will step in and take over and make the process a little more less expensive. Because after all, we're the Department of Natural Resources. doesn't make sense for us to take trash out of the water and put it on the natural resources of the land. So we just need to find another place that's responsible and sustainable to deal with these vessels. And hopefully we'll be able to do that through this program. I am working with Sea Grant and the Rhode Island person who did that study so that we can try and get this vessel recycling program up and running. So I'm really excited about that, and I can't wait to start on that because disposing of these vessels in landfills where fiberglass will stay for hundreds of years is just not sustainable. So are there any questions that I can answer?
Well, I was going to mention, put a plug in for the Rhode Island Marine Trade Association. Evan Ridley there, my counterpart over in Rhode Island, was a guest on Seattle Boat Show Connected. I get my TV shows right, Mark. But yeah, it was fun to listen to him talk about the program. I can put that in the chat. If not this week, I can make sure that it gets in there to learn more about the recycling program that Evan has pioneered out in Rhode Island, but also in Washington State with our friends at Northwest Maritime Center and DNR, and very exciting. And we're at just at the first inning of this 9-inning game around recycling of fiberglass.
Yes,
Troy, I think what you're doing is fantastic, and I really appreciate your enthusiasm for this. This is, this is where our tax dollars are going, and this is great. And each boater with our registration is paying into this. It's unfortunate it has to be that way, and Peter and I were involved in some of that in the beginning of it, of that contribution, and we expressed some concerns. I think the original dollars, Peter, if you remember, they were talking about a much higher than $3 per registered boat, and we both argued in testimony that boaters are not rich just because they own a boat. And unfortunately, Troy, you see the effect of that, the other side of that, of those that don't have the money to keep a vessel going.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. And I would say one more thing. I would say you're not rich because you own a boat.
Troy, we've talked about those jokes. Troy, we tell the jokes on this show, darn it.
And we think we're rich because we have this incredible experience of going out and going boating.
Oh, that's a rich in a different manner.
It is.
I will a little data point for you. 76% of all boat owners have incomes less than $100,000. So there, Troy. I also put in the chat the boat recycling piece and the time when you can fast forward to see more about this. Really, if this topic interests you in whatsoever, take a look at what's in the chat on that link and fast forward and listen to Evan evangelize about all the recycling that's going to be going on. So very exciting stuff. Yeah.
Great. Well,
thank
Troy,
you very much.
We really appreciate what you're doing, and you're coming on and joining us tonight. It's a much needed topic that needs to be discussed, and I think we all feel that pain when we're cruising by and we see a boat that didn't make it. And a little earlier, I got something on Facebook just this morning about a beautiful looking sailboat in, no pun intended, Useless Bay at the bottom of Whidbey Island. And the Facebook post was saying, geez, somebody ought to rescue this boat and take it. There it is. Look at that. And, I was ready to jump in my car and run down and wait for the next high tide, but I already have a boat. But yeah, look at that. That's really a shame that a boat like that would be abandoned. So
yes, it really is. And it's my pleasure to come out and talk to you people about this because you're my stakeholders. Without you, there wouldn't be a program, right? And we do this to make sure that the water is out there clean and safe for you guys to use. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, I mean,
Troy, you end up with a lot of boats that are leaking oil when they're abandoned. Is there a huge environmental issue with this?
Yes, and not only from the oil or fuel, but we work really closely with ecology and the U.S. Coast Guard, who can go out there and respond immediately to these oil and fuel spills. And usually they leave the vessels behind, which is kind of a sore spot, but I understand. Because these vessels are not only a source for fuel and oil, but they're a source for other contaminants like heavy metals and pesticides and household cleaners. And well, your bottom paint is made to prevent life from growing. So we really don't want that out in the environment all the time either. So yes, we do work very closely with the ecology and the U.S. Coast Guard, as well as a lot of sheriff offices, to respond to those spills. Thank you.
And I would put it from a lobbying advocacy perspective, as much boat money as the boaters put in, we are very diligent about ensuring that that money is spent on recreational vessels and not swept up on these larger, for example, military boats that, well, of course we want them taken care of. We don't think it's quite fair that we're putting money in for non-recreational boats. So that's something that we work on all the time. I'm sure Troy's tired of hearing about it, but that's something RBAW and NMTA are always, and Boat US at the national level and NMMA, we're always banging on the door, boaters money for boating projects, time in and time out. So
I'm always open to suggestions, and I'm always willing to have a conversation. And you're right, Peter. The majority of the vessels that we remove are recreational.
good stuff.
Very
Good stuff. So I put Troy's contact info in the chat. Troy is not in the office right now, so I think his cellular phone is the best way to reach him.
It is.
Excellent. And then you're always willing and accommodating our schedule when it comes to the Northwest Marine Boatyard Conference. So I think we'll be talking with that in short order, Troy, on a different day. But thank you for all you've done for our industry.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Sure. So,
So
hey, Mark.
Peter, there's
yeah.
a rumor that next week you're not joining us.
Yeah, that's true. I will be in St. Louis visiting my mom and brother and sister and taking in all the sights and sounds. And it'll be hot and humid there, Mark. As you left the East Coast humidity, I'll be partaking in that. I don't think there'll be a lot of cicadas, but yeah, I've got a fun week planned. So I'll be gone next Thursday. What's in store? What am I missing, Mark?
Well, we're going to have a great presentation. We've got your boss and my good friend George Harris, president of the NMTA, subbing in for Peter, and we're going to be talking to Phil Reese about what goes on within a boatyard, which all of us are always curious about it, because we get to the boatyard, we give them our boat, and all of a sudden it comes up with a bill for hundreds or thousands of dollars. So Phil's going to talk about the realities of that, and how to work with a boatyard, and it'll be our usual good show. Unfortunately, you won't be there, but hopefully you'll tune in from St. Louis. So.
Oh, yeah, most likely. You know me, Mark. But yeah, you won't want to miss Phil Reese. He is never short of words and just has no filter. So if you want the straight to goodness truth, you'll want to hear from Phil. So yeah, that will be a great one, and I'm looking forward to catching up with you all as that goes down. I wanted to make a little announcement, Mark. We've got the Classic Yacht Association in conjunction with the Port of Seattle are going to host the Bell Harbor Marina Classic Weekend on June 19th and June 20th at Bell Harbor Marina. Over 30 classic motor yachts. I saw Frank Gonzalez on our call right now. Many of them built prior to World War II, and will welcome visitors throughout this Father's Day weekend celebration. It's a fantastic event. I know Diane Lander, has longtime friend of the show, has been involved with that.
She is.
That big event through the years. So I will make sure that everyone has the link to that. And we want to say thank you to the Groesbeck Realty Group. Mark, how is Jean and the team doing?
I need to get over to Jean's office. She's a half a block from my office. And I chatted with her during the Anacortes boat and yacht sale, and she's just ecstatic with the sponsorship of the show, and glad to hear that. They want to continue on, and if you're interested in any waterfront property or a slip in the Anacortes area, call Groesbeck Realty Group, and they'll be happy to help you and advise you and let you know what's available on the market.
That's excellent. That's excellent. So yeah, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. And Mark, do we happen to know by chance the show after as people set their calendars, what we've got in store for the rest of the summer? It doesn't have to be in order. What are some other topics that we're going to be tackling?
Let's see. Landon's been really busy lining up speakers, and I'm drawing a complete blank under the pressure of our live TV show. But I know they're good, and we're looking forward to it. So
cool.
I'll have that for next week.
Sounds good. So yeah,
I think we have them up on the website, but if not, they're going to be up on the Seattle Boat Show Live. Openforboating.com.
Openforboating.com. That's right. So we hope that you all can take a look at that. And as we say goodnight, we'll go out with the colors from Roche Harbor. Mark, unless you have something else to say, we're gonna.
No, I'm hoping that Kevin Carlton is watching. I let them know when I talked to them the other day that we close out our show every week with them. So Kevin, if you're there, we appreciate everything you do. and we appreciate featuring colors at Roche Harbor.
Oh, excellent. Cool. Well, thank you so much, everyone at home. Thanks for being a part of our special show every Thursday night.
Not yet.
The British flag, and then the American flag comes down with a salute to colors by a cannon, and then it plays taps. In Roche Harbor, please come and join us for our time-honored celebration. We look forward to sharing this experience with all of the boaters here at Roche Harbor, and have a safe and happy boating season.